Welcome to Your Health, a podcast from the Hoosier Ag Today presents your Purdue Extension, brought to you by Indiana Farm Bureau, a unified voice for agriculture. I'm your host, Greg Allen, and on today's podcast, canning time is upon us, so stay tuned.
At Indiana Farm Bureau, we serve tree farmers, goat farmers, and in fact, all farmers. With over 250,000 members, Indiana Farm Bureau represents a broad range of farmers and puts power in your collective voice. You also get advice from our subject matter experts, more affordable health plan options, and support for youth programs statewide. So whether you grow soybeans or strawberries, membership means you'll be heard. Become a member today at infb.org.
You know, whether you're preserving tomatoes from the garden, making homemade jam, or trying the latest food preservation trends, making sure your food is safe is just as important as making it delicious. So today we're talking about the science behind home food preservation, why safe canning practices continue to evolve, and where you can find trusted information before filling your pantry shelves. Joining us today on Your Health is Janel Franks and Tonya Short, both Health and Human Sciences Regional Extension educators. Ladies, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get right into the nitty-gritty of it. Why is food safety so important when it comes to home food preservation? Janel, we'll start with you.
If you're creating a safe food supply for yourself and you want it to last a really long time so that you can eat that food later and have the most nutrition and the most enjoyment for your family and for yourself, it's really important that you start with food safety, that you're preventing bacteria and from getting into your food supply, because that will really break things down a lot more quickly and could cause some serious illness.
Fantastic answer. Tonya, do you have anything to add to that? That was pretty good.
Well, if we're talking specifically about canning, I have one really big word, and that's botulism. So that is what we are most worried about with food preservation and specifically into canning, when we really have to impress upon people why certain procedures are absolutely non-negotiable in following them.
Can you go a little deeper into botulism? I'm sure people are familiar with the word, but maybe we can educate a little bit more about what it is.
Yeah. So when we think about food safety, and we've all heard it in the news, there's different pathogenic microbe that can contaminate our food supply and cause foodborne illness. E. coli, salmonella, some of these that are sadly a little more common, but one that we don't hear about very often, and that's because we do have a really safe food supply, and that is C. botulinum, which can cause the illness botulism, which is a neurotoxin. It can cause death within 3 days if it is not treated properly. And why this particular bacteria and the spores and toxins it produces is so dangerous in canning is because it loves low acid environments. So let's think about things that we're canning, like green beans, really popular in Indiana to can. So our low acid vegetables, and it loves to be in low oxygen environments. So we put it in a jar of food that's low acid, low oxygen, and we've maybe skipped a proper step to not do a thorough kill. And we could be breeding that all winter long while it's sitting on our shelf. And then we open it for our family thinking we're going to have a family reunion. And then we send folks home sick and they wake up the next morning and things are not so right. And so it's very, very serious. And we don't want to scare people, right? We want people to do this, but we also want them to do it the proper way so they don't have to worry. So they know, hey, we're following these tested guidelines that have been proven that if we do them properly, we are going to be safe. And so that's why Janel and I and our whole food preservation team, that's our goal, right? We just want to make sure people know what that science is.
We don't want grandma's green bean surprise.
Great.
Maybe not.
And we're going to get into more about how to safely can and that sort of thing as we go on. But let's talk about the science of canning and how it's changed over the years. Why is it important for even experienced canners to keep learning?
I'll take that one. Oh, we've learned a lot through science, and things have changed. Our soils have changed. Our the types of tomatoes or the types of green beans that we are growing have changed. The science of that has not really changed, but we've just discovered a lot of things about that. And so it's always just a good idea for you to kind of brush up on those skills. If grandma taught you those things, they may be correct, but she probably taught you what she knew at the time. And that may not be the best guideline anymore. I always kind of say, I don't want my grandma's medication, so maybe I don't want her canning techniques either, because those have been updated. Both of those have been updated.
There's an old joke about how a woman used to make her hams with the ends cut off. And after years of doing that, the husband finally says, "Why do you always cook your hams with the ends cut off?" She goes, "I don't know. Mom used to always do it that way." And so she called her mom, and Mom says, "Well, your grandma used to do it that way." And so they called Grandma, and she said, "Well, I didn't have enough room in the pan."
So no reason at all, basically.
For no reason at all. And so I think continual learning really is the key for anything, but especially things that you think are tried and true and tested ways of doing things. Did you have any other thoughts on that, Tonya?
Sure. I would just add to what Janel said. So she mentioned tomatoes, and that's one thing we think of like, oh, that's an acidic fruit, right? Well, it's actually kind of on that borderline where botulism could grow or it could not grow. And because we have so many different varieties, we have so many hybrids, the research or the techniques that we teach now are probably different than what our moms or our grandmas learned. So just if you're listening, do acidify your tomatoes. And then one other example that I'll share is peaches. We think that nearly all fruits are high acid, but we've actually learned in recent years that white peaches are not acidic enough to be considered a high acid fruit, but yellow peaches are. So there's these little nuances everywhere that people may not be aware of as the science evolves.
And, we're talking about new ways of doing things and that sort of thing, but for some things, the old tested recipes are an important way to go. And, there are certain things that can happen if people decide to create their own recipes for canning and try new methods that haven't been tested and qualified. Can we talk about that a little bit? We'll start with you, Janel.
Mm-hmm. I think that most of the phone calls I take from people that when they call into the extension office and need some guidance are because they have their own recipe. Either it's grandma's recipe and they really want to recreate what grandma did, or they've created their own salsa recipe and they want some guidance on how long they can can it to make it safe and things like that. And we can't answer those questions. I always say that grandma's recipe would be great to put in the freezer because that's always going to be safe. We don't want people to just kind of create their own things because we have tested recipes like you mentioned. If you are going to start canning and you're looking for a new recipe, please go to the National Center for Food Preservation or one of the cooperative extension sites. We have tested recipes where they have come up with guidelines that we know are safe. And if you use those guidelines, then you're going to have a safe product. We can't just make those things up. The other option, especially for salsa, people want to add corn, which is low acid, in with the mix, or they want to add fresh salsa or fresh cilantro or black beans or something like that. I always say find a recipe that's close and then add those things later when you open that jar. That way that cilantro still is really fresh and the corn is, tastes better and things like that. So you can always add those things after you open the jar as well.
I was just going to ask you where people can find trusted recipes and safe food preservation guidelines, so the great answer on that. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Tonya?
I would just add a bit of the science. Janelle made all the same points that I would tell people. But the reason we can't help you figure that out is because we don't have the equipment to figure it out. So there's really detailed testing that goes into these recipes with high-end equipment to measure the temperature and everything to make sure that it's doing a kill step for all the potential pathogens. And so if we go and we start altering the pH, or we start altering the density or the thickness or the viscosity or the size of our pieces, now we've suddenly changed a whole lot of dynamics that's going on inside that canner. And so it's not just a matter of adding more of something to make it tastier, right? It really is down to those many pieces of science.
Going back to new ways of doing things, we've been seeing a lot more people that are purchasing these home freeze dryers. Why has this become so popular? And are there food safety considerations that people should know before investing in a freeze dryer?
There sure are. Freeze drying as a technique is not new. You know, obviously we grew up hearing about the freeze dried ice cream that the astronauts took to space and things like that. So it's not a new process, but having a home device that you can use to freeze dry your own items or your own food supply, that's a little bit newer. It's a pretty costly investment. It's about $3,000 to get kind of a starter kit of that, of freeze drying. Yes. It's very popular with homesteaders. It's very popular with backpackers because it creates a shelf-stable product. And so it is really neat. I think that the craze has started with the freeze-dried candy and things like that people get at a craft fair or whatever, and it's really tasty and they enjoy that. I know, who doesn't love that, right? But it can also be very useful for leftovers. Like you shouldn't can your leftovers. Just say, oh, I have a lot of this soup, I'm just going to throw it in jars and can it. That's, first of all, you're not using a tested recipe, but also it just isn't a good guideline. But with a freeze dryer, you can do that. You can throw your leftover chili into the freeze dryer and make, bags, Mylar bags or jars of dried chili that you just add water to and you have dinner again. So I think that that's a very attractive thing to a lot of people. I think creating a shelf-stable item that lasts for, I've read, up to 26 years is what they're saying now, is very attractive to a lot of people. I've not tested that. I always kind of wonder, how do they know that? But, I think
who's eating 21-year-old food?
Yes. Well, I mean, we haven't had these machines long enough to know that, I think, but that's what they say. So it works really by removing the oxygen or the moisture. So that's how that's kind of working. It freezes the food and then it dehydrates it under pressure. And so that's how it creates that crispy texture. The problem with it is that there's no kill step. So there's no point in the process where we're killing bacteria. So it's very important that you're sanitizing your trays and you're using gloves and all of the things that we need to do for food safety, because there's not going to be a kill step for bacteria anywhere else in the process. And then storing those items, if you get moisture in there, your whole supply is going to be gone. So there are a lot of things to consider. I think that it's a neat process. I think it's a little bit of a novelty, and we'll just wait and see if it sticks around or if it's something, a very expensive passing fad.
Tonya, what do you think?
Well, currently I think it's a very expensive hobby. But, I did talk to Janelle about this recently and some of the experiences she's had with folks and the homesteaders and the backpackers. And that does make more sense to me than the freeze-dried candy, because, as a nutrition educator, when I see the freeze-dried candy section at my supermarket is bigger than the freeze-dried like fruit and vegetable. Well, there's no vegetables, but the freeze-dried real food section, like, to me, that just seems a little off. But, we're all entitled to our candy of choice. But in addition to what Janelle said about, the kill step and making sure you're taking care of the food safety, it's also like, with any food preservation method, what you put in is going to determine what you get out. So if you're putting in 3-day-old soup, the nutritional content of your freeze-dried soup is going to be less. And then also, it's actually not a very quick process. It's not any quicker than a dehydrator, an old-fashioned dehydrator. And so people might be surprised if they, you see this big, like, space-age looking machine, and it's actually a really lengthy process of this long machine working on your countertop. And so it's an investment of time and energy and money. I guess people just have to decide. You're right. That's a base model, Greg. That's a base model.
Yes.
Wow, that's base model. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, you ladies teach food preservation classes through Purdue Extension. If someone attends one of your classes, what can they expect to learn?
Well, that kind of depends.
Well, they're going to learn it all.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, it depends on the topic and kind of the format of the class. Sometimes we're doing a demonstration, and sometimes it's a more formal hands-on class. So if we're doing a cooking class, a canning class, we're going to do about an hour just of education about the process. And then we will go into a kitchen somewhere and we will do hands-on learning of, boiling water bath canning or pressure canning. And so whenever possible, we want to give people that experience under our guidance, so we can kind of give them that hands-on experience so that they can learn it on a deeper level.
And Tonya, you said you'll learn it all. What did you mean by that?
Well, we hope, right? So like Janel said, we want you to first understand the science of it and kind of the textbook version. It's kind of like if you think about like math class when they made you do it the long way and then they taught you how to do it the short way. So not that there's really a shortcut. Maybe I shouldn't use that analogy.
Yeah,
there's no shortcut in canning. Oh, I love math. But anyways, I guess that's why I don't mind the science either. And so the people who geek out on the science with me really love my classes. But I find that they really appreciate being able to get into the kitchen and get their hands on the equipment, especially the pressure canner. People are unnecessarily scared of it. And honestly, I am more scared. The people that are scared of the pressure canner who will then go and put their green beans in the water bath canner, which is not safe, that scares me more than them using a pressure canner. So people, come to our class if you're afraid. We will help you not be afraid, and we'll make sure you have all the tools to do it right and safe.
Well, there are 3 things that I hate. Math. We got to take a quick break here, ladies, but when we return, having to tell someone the bad news. You got to throw that food away. Stay tuned to Your Health. We'll be right back.
Starting conversations about mental health with family and with farmers is very difficult because it's not a subject that's always been a part of normal conversation. Really just opening a conversation or checking in with someone saying, hey, how's it going? How are you doing really? What are you feeling? Are you feeling overwhelmed? What are some ways that I can help take some of the stress off of you? But there are always ways that you can help. Just providing a little bit of extra support, because many times we see families that tend to struggle with keeping up with everything that's happening. Reach out and make sure that that family feels supported. That's a major way that people can help a farm family during busy seasons.
Farmer suicide rates are significantly higher than the general population. That's why Purdue Extension offers the Purdue Farms Trust Team to offer help when it's needed most.
And we're back with Your Health, talking today to Extension educators Janel and Tonya. Ladies, again, thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to be here.
My pleasure.
Now, before the break, we were talking about some of the educational classes that you have to offer. Janel, what are other food preservation services that Purdue Extension has to offer?
Well, one of the things that we can do in many of our extension offices, you should call ahead to make sure that the extension office you plan to go to does this particular service. But we can test your pressure canners and make sure that your dial gauge is measuring correctly. And that's always good to do before you go into a long season of pressure canning. So we can let you know if that needs to be replaced or if you just need to adjust just a pound or so. Other things that we can do is answer any of your questions. So before you start doing a recipe and you think that you might have questions, always call us before you get started, because we hate it when you get to the end and we have bad news about your product that it probably is not safe. So those are two things, and I'll let Tonya take anything else that we can share.
Sure, I absolutely love it when people call me. That's the day I step back and I prop up my feet, because I just really appreciate being able to have that one-on-one with folks and let them feel confident about getting their specific question answers and their needs met. And I do hate giving them bad news also, Janelle. But when we don't have to, or when we're able to help them find resources, or maybe they want a new canning book and they don't want to have to order it online, and we keep a stock in our office so they can just come by, then, I always welcome that as well. In addition to the pressure canner testing, please don't skip that. If your pressure canner dial gauge is off, then you are not canning at the right temperature, which means it'll either be too hot, which is not unsafe. Your food will just be really cooked, or it will not be hot enough, which could then be unsafe. So come visit us. We'll check it out for you.
I love it.
Yes.
You said you receive a wide variety of questions from the public. I wonder, do you have any memorable stories or common misconceptions that really stand out to you? Janelle, we'll start with you.
Okay, I had a lady call me. She had canned batches and batches of pickles. And maybe a year later, she went to check on those and all of them had come unsealed. And I just said, those probably, you must have missed something. They were not canned correctly if they came, and if the lids came off, just sitting on your shelf. And she said, but why can't I still eat those? She said, my grandma used to ferment pickles and we would just keep them in buckets. Why can't I just go ahead and eat them anyway? And so I explained that fermentation is a different process than just pickling in a jar. I don't know why you would want to eat something that had come unsealed, but she was ready and willing to do that. And I don't know that she didn't go ahead and do that based on how she was not arguing with me, but really challenging me on that point.
Tasty. Tonya, do you have any memorable stories?
I'm sure I do, and I will think of them all when we hang up. I should have sat down and tried to think of them, but unfortunately, we kind of have this knowledge that when folks call us and they start out their story in a certain way, we kind of have a foreboding of how it's going to end. And it's similar to the Janelle story where folks really don't want to waste food. And I get that. I get that 100%. And so that's why I impress upon folks that, look, you're spending a lot of time with your food preservations. You're spending a lot of money with not only the food, but if you're canning, you've got the jars and your equipment, etc. Don't let all that go to waste. Just do it right the first time, and then you don't have to worry about it. But with your story, Janelle, I always want to point out one other thing to folks. And this really happened in full force during the pandemic, where there was a shortage of equipment. And there started to be a lot of counterfeit, if you would think of that's a thing, of canning lids, right? That they were falsely advertising as being name brand, but they were being produced in bulk. I mean, I'm going to exaggerate here, but 20 lids for $1 or something, extreme. And the message is that I want to give folks, I rarely will ever tell folks to buy name brand, but if you're investing that amount of time and your food and your hard work, just don't skimp. Get the ones that have been tested, that have been around for decades, if not centuries, and know that your food is going to still be safe at the end of the winter when you're eating that last jar.
It's a good
I
tip.
mean, I don't know what else you would say to that, Janelle.
I agree. I would say though,
Yeah.
for this lady, if all of them came unsealed, she probably did this open kettle method that we don't recommend, where you just get everything hot and put the lids on and they seal over time. If they all came off, that's my guess is what happened, but we don't always know. And that's the hard thing when people call in, we don't always know. So we always err on the side of safety.
Janelle, your example,
yeah.
I think, was a very obvious reason. But why is it that sometimes the safest recommendation is to throw that food away?
Well, botulism is odorless and tasteless, and we don't know. And so if you are canning something high acid in boiling water bath is so safe, because if something happens with that jar, it's probably going to grow a mold or a yeast, and you're going to open it, you're going to smell it, you're going to see it, you're not going to eat it because that's gross. But if it's a low acid food that you haven't properly preserved, it's going to be odorless and tasteless. And botulism, that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that you know and do things correctly, because it is, there is a level of danger there.
And I think even if it does look and smell gross, there are some people, pickle lady, that would go ahead and eat it anyway. I don't hate to call anybody out. But Tonya, what say you about this?
Well, Greg, this is gonna gross you out then. So I actually
I'm ready.
interviewed a food. Are you ready? Everybody, get ready. I actually interviewed our food safety specialist here several months ago, and one of the things she said was, so we talk about spoilage microorganisms, which is like the molds and the yeast and things that you can see, right? And then we talk about our pathogenic microorganisms, which are the things that we can't see, we can't taste, but they cause foodborne illness. And what our food safety specialist shared in this interview was that our spoiled food is probably the safest food you could ever eat, because the spoilage microorganisms have outcompeted the pathogenic microorganisms. So that food is not going to it's not going to give you a foodborne illness. It might make you a little queasy from the thought of eating it, but it's not going to give you salmonella or E. coli or botulism. There you go.
Huh. I still don't know that I'm going to go that route.
I would not either, but here's the other thing. We have people in our classes who they really want to know how far they can push us sometimes in getting us to sway our stories. And so it's always like, but if it was the end of the world, could I eat it then? If it was the apocalypse, could I eat it then? If zombies had taken over, could I eat it then? And I'm trying to make light of it, but like, there is a line, right? We have a really hard line that we draw, because we believe in that research-based information. We believe in the science behind it, because most of all, we care about the people we're teaching, right? We care about their families and their kids and all the people we will never meet that we don't want to give foodborne illness.
Truly.
Or
All right,
mold.
ladies, I want to talk about food safety tips, because as gardens begin producing this season, what are your top food safety tips for anyone planning to preserve fruits and vegetables at home? We'll start with you, Janelle.
I think that washing your hands and washing that produce is probably our best tips, making sure that your jars are really clean, or whatever vessels you're going to maybe freeze in. Just make sure that everything is really clean to begin with. Because especially if there's not going to be a cooking step in that process, there's not going to be a kill step. So we want to make sure that you are getting rid of any of those harmful pathogens and not sharing your own pathogens with them as well. So make sure that if you have hangnails that you are, or a sore or something, that you're covering those with gloves so that we don't pass staph into our food as well. So making sure that just following all those good food safety tips to begin with, no matter what method you're using.
I was hungry before we started talking about this stuff. Tonya, you got any good tips for us?
I would echo all of that. And then I would also say, remind folks to think about cross-contamination. So when we're thinking about food that needs to be cooked before we consume it, we're thinking about our protein foods, our eggs, our meats, etc. Being careful that we're keeping that separate from foods that either won't be cooked at all. So think about that green salad, or if it's foods that have already been cooked and they won't be reheated. So maybe our deviled eggs or something of that sort. So just being sure that we're cleaning and sanitizing our kitchen utensils between those tasks. If possible, prepare the fresh foods first, get them, prepared, chopped, wet mixed, whatever, put back in the fridge, hold them until supper time. And now you have your space to do your eggs and your meats and your other things without potentially cross-contamination there. And don't assume just because I grew it at home that it can't possibly have bacterial contamination, because it's in the soil. It's it's just unavoidable, right? So we always need to take precautions.
Well, Janel, Tonya, you ladies have been an absolute joy, a lot of fun. And so I've got one more question, and it really, I think, is one that either one of you can answer, but I don't think both of you need to answer. So I'm wondering, maybe we should do like a rock, paper, scissors for who gets to answer this question. Are you guys up for that?
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Here we go. All right, ladies, put them up. Oh, the other way. there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Both paper. Okay.
Oh, Tonya wins.
Oh, Tonya. All right. Where can people go to learn more about Purdue Extension's food preservation programs and upcoming classes?
Oh, absolutely. So glad I get to be the finale. So we have a website. It is an obnoxiously long URL. So I will just tell you to go to your favorite web browser and ask for Purdue Home Food Preservation. It will be the first link, and you can go there and find all the things you want to know about our upcoming classes, where you can find resources, and where you can find contact information for your nearest food preservation instructor.
I love it. And it's funny because, I do all of the Purdue Extension branch podcasts, and every single person I talk to says, our website's so very difficult to get to, but it's easy just to search.
Yes. It's true.
Ladies, again, thank you so much for joining me. You've been so much fun. This has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we hope today's conversation reminds you that preserving food safely starts with using the latest science and the trusted resources. Whether you're a first-time canner or have been preserving food for decades, a quick refresher can help protect your family and ensure all your hard work does not go to waste. To learn more about food safety, home food preservation, or to find a Purdue Extension class near you, just contact your local Purdue Extension office or visit Purdue Extension's Health and Human Sciences resources online. Thank you for tuning in to Your Health, a podcast from the Hoosier Ag Today presents Your Purdue Extension, brought to you by the Indiana Farm Bureau, the United Voice for Agriculture. I'm your host, Greg Allen, reminding you to like and share this out as we continue bringing you trusted information to help you live well, stay healthy, and make informed decisions for yourself and for your family.